Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, Planet Internet. My name is Scott Schertzen alongside Mr. Obie Spencer, and this is the Sports Den. Welcome to Spangler Sports World on Zingo TV, channel 250. Kindly remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. When you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free, so you can't beat the price, and they welcome comments, good, bad, or indifferent. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. So, like I said, my name is Scott Schertzen, and to my right over, or my left, I guess we'll call it in this case, is a very, very dashing looking Mr. Obie Spencer. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm great. Happy New Year to everyone. I know it's a
Yes.
little early, but we may not see you until then. So party like it's
Dude,
party like
love
it's
this look.
1999 when we all thought the world was going to end, but at least it didn't.
Yeah, Y2K being what it is, it did not do anything, and here we are now, 22 years after what happened with Y2K, and everybody knows where they were in that moment, and everybody knows somebody that flipped off the lights at that point too, because somebody's got to do that. So anyway, we got a bunch of stuff that we're going to be talking about right now as we cover some of the NFL as we're reaching the last 2 weeks of the NFL season before it goes into the playoffs. I do want to talk a little bit about COVID right now, what that's doing across all the leagues, and are the leagues handling it properly? Plus, at the same time, I know, Obie, I think you may have a couple ideas of your own, a couple thoughts of your own. But first off, you doing good?
I'm great. Well, my fantasy football season's over, but other than that, I'm great. A lot of money down the drain this year, but there's always next year.
That's okay. You know what? There's always next year, which is the mantra of many, many sports teams, including a lot of the sports teams in New York right now. But we'll get to that possibly in its own due course. What I wanted to start off with is I did want to talk a little bit about COVID right now and what's happening out there. This has been a rehash of a lot of ways what happened last year, this time with the Omicron variant, forcing games to be rescheduled. Entire leagues like the NHL's pushed back some of their start times for the break. Last night being a great example where the New Orleans Saints had literally 21 players test positive in the last week for Omicron, forcing them to not only start a fourth-round rookie last night on Monday Night Football, but try to coax two quarterbacks out of retirement before finally landing on a third with Blake Bortles. What I wanted to ask you and I wanted to talk to you about is, are these leagues handling things the right way? Or do you think there's got to be a revamp that's got to be done to be able to contain Omicron? Or should they just be like, you know what, forget it, let's just keep going what it is and just deal with it through the rest of the season?
This is such a hard and complicated question, logistically, without getting into even, if I say something that's going to step on someone's political point of views. So it's crazy. It's a crazy situation we live in. I think, you look at, I look at a lot of different charts on a daily basis and have been looking at the same charts for almost 2 years now. And so Omicron, for whatever the thousands of different scientific reasons is infecting a lot of people, but not making people very sick. That's just what it's doing. So I think the leagues need to take that into account in how they try to go forward. So I don't think the easiest solution is actually the pause the season solution, but I don't think that's the right solution. I think you try to persevere. I think in some sports, in their time of seasons, it's easy. Like I think in basketball, as you know, I say the season doesn't start anyway until Christmas Day. So if we go an extra 2 or 3 weeks, none of the teams are going to fall so far out of the playoff race. So the same teams might not get their seeds they should get, and then you might lose a team like you did last year with the Lakers in the one-game playing game. But so it is. I still think you're going to get the best teams winning because already the two best teams in that league have started to separate themselves, and no one's really going to catch them overall. I'm not enough of a hockey fan to fully know. Hockey does have a real issue, though, with border crossing. So you have two different countries. How do they want to handle it? So that makes things difficult. Football, it was having this crazy, crazy, crazy year where the middle teams were all not able to get separation. And unfortunately, Omicron made the difference. It truly did. It knocked out the football team, giving the Eagles an opportunity to take care of business there. It knocked out the Saints, giving Miami a chance to take care of business there. So if you look in the NFC, like the 49ers and the Eagles, they only got to win one of their two games towards the end of the season, and the playoff picture is set. Just rankings. Like we've been talking for weeks about how that Eagle Cowboy game might be coming down to who or what, and in the end, the Cowboys may actually want to. If the Rams lose this week, the Cowboys are going to try to lose next week, hoping that Tampa Bay loses so that they all have the same. Like the whole reverse of what we thought was going to happen might not. It's craziness. In the NFC, in the AFC, same thing. Now, I think Indianapolis is about to lose Wentz, who didn't get himself vaccinated. Which, for any of us who live in Philadelphia, not a surprise he didn't go ahead and do what was best for the team, and now he may not get to play. And yes, maybe they lose that game and the Eagles get a better draft pick, knock wood. So, to your question, I don't have a good answer. I wish I was in those meetings. I have opinions, but not enough information to fight for my opinions. The last thing I'll say as I'm rambling on is last week when us as Eagle fans were very unhappy about that game being played, when it was played, given the extra day, forcing the Eagles to have 3 games and 12, a whole bunch of stuff. One of the things that came out was it wasn't the NFL. The NFL wanted to cancel that game, wanted to give the game to the Eagles and give the Redskins a loss, or at least just cancel the game, period, and figure out what to do at the end of the season. But the players, they didn't want to lose a game check. So that's a side of it that's also getting thrown in. So either you can stop, see what happens with Omicron, how long is it going to take to burn through? You as well know as well as anyone what that's going to do for TV scheduling, especially around Super Bowl and playoffs at this point. Or you just try to muddle through and hope that you have a champ that at the end of the season you can look at and go, okay, this is definitely one of the 3 best teams that won it. So I feel confident in the outcome. And we have seen that because in all these years, we haven't really seen a team that won that we're like, that team should not have been in it. They only were in it because of COVID.
And that's where I think you bring up a solid point there too. Do they try and muddle through? And if they do, how big of a risk are they taking? Because with the Omicron variant being something that can be spread around much more easily, like I said, the Saints had 21 players that tested positive in the past week, maybe 8 days at this point, fine, but whatever. But it runs like wildfire through there. So what happens basically if it affects a playoff game, an AFC, NFC championship, the Super Bowl? You have to look at this from the standpoint of how badly are you hurting your brand by taking this risk and by forcing players to have to sit out. What if, we had the issue with Aaron Rodgers earlier this year. What if there's an issue in Green Bay and they're going to the Super Bowl, which, right now, I think all things considered, the Super Bowl and the NFC championship is going to probably more than likely go through Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. What happens if something plows through there? What happens if something starts flying right through the Chiefs, the Chiefs, if they end up going, to the Super Bowl? You have a massive risk where you can absolutely, unquestionably water down your brand and water down your product of the biggest sporting event in the country, arguably one of the biggest in the world, if everybody and their brother is sitting there and stuck with COVID, where it's going to have something like last night, where you have somebody who is a 4th-round pick, starts his first game ever, and ends up going, I looked at the numbers, 12 for 20, 130 yards, and 2 interceptions. Additionally, the poor kid, actually last night, his first game ever, his passing yards ended up being 81 because he got sacked 8 times. Again, you have this product where you are taking, and Goodell is taking a huge risk, I think, by allowing this sort of thing to continue and not being able to properly figure out a way to contain this. And what happens if, like I said, come Super Bowl time, the Super Bowl itself, you have 10, 15 marquee players on each side that are out. Say Patrick Mahomes is out, Kelsey is out, Aaron Rodgers, say Tampa gets in, you lose out on Tom Brady, Gronk, Fournette, if and when he comes back. You take a massive, massive risk by hoping things come out okay. And this is going to crush the NFL if they have a game like this coming out of COVID and it looks honestly just like an inferior product on a absolutely national or international stage.
Well, here's what I would say about the Super Bowl, not the playoffs. Look, you can have a mess in the playoffs, but I'm sorry to both of those teams, whoever you are, who are going to make the Super Bowl. You have a week, 2 weeks before the game.
Mm-hmm.
You need to when you win your division championship game, kiss your family, get in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And not for nothing, I'm sorry. That's what like. If it happens and that team loses, I'm not going to feel bad for that team. Now, that's different than the playoffs. The playoffs are a lot harder. It's 1 week. You can still you can catch it today and still have it. Fortunately, Omicron runs quick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing about the Super Bowl. It runs through quickly, doesn't seem to have the same sort of issues. Now, that doesn't mean everyone who got sick is Omicron. There could be a Delta in there or whatever. Hopefully, you've taken your precautions, that you've done whatever your research is and taken the precautions and done what your team physicians or whatever that is. And you're prepared for this, but you have that ability to be safe for the big game.
Mm-hmm.
The other games are a lot harder. Now, presuming, it's going to take a lot for Kansas City not to get the bye. I think they have 2 games up. Green Bay, I think they win, and they have this tiebreaker over everybody. So if they win, they can start to protect their bodies, And we've seen teams all the time. That Indianapolis team that did not win a Super Bowl and did not go undefeated, took the last week off. There's opportunities to protect yourself. I don't know how this is going to play out. I do know that one of the things that is not being discussed as much in this conversation that I have read, I haven't fully verified it, is that the Omicron variant in South America, just like here, was a huge spike, but it also was a short spike. It sort of burned through quickly. They don't know exactly why, but that seemed to be what happened. Maybe so it's even plausible by the time the Super Bowl comes, we won't be worried about this. Again, I'm not worried about the Super Bowl as much as I'm worried about the last 2 weeks in the playoffs. And obviously, look, I do think it's already affected the bottom teams of who's getting in. I think the Eagles got in real nice, got it good and easy with what happened with the game against the football team, who still hadn't recovered. And then what happened to the Saints, my Eagles got a present from Omicron. Doesn't mean they wouldn't have won those, but there was a present there. I'm not sure so much it's happened in the AFC, although I'm sure there's a lot of Cleveland fans who would tell you, look how close we've come against good teams. If we hadn't had a virus spring, if we could have started, as much as Baker may not be great, if we could have started him that 1 week against Baltimore, who's a team that's falling down. Baltimore themselves didn't get to start Hundley, who had a great week. So I think it's already affected the product. I just don't think it's affected the best teams. I don't think Green Bay's in the playoffs comfortably. They deserve to be. Kansas City's in the playoffs comfortably. The 5 teams we've been talking about the whole time in the NFC, they're in the playoffs. And they've already clinched. These are the same 5 teams we've talked about since about week 6 or 7. Like the 2 teams, these are the teams that deserve. In the it messed with the AFC more, but we never had a grip on who the good teams in the AFC are. And I'm still, other than okay, Baltimore and Cleveland, they probably may not be getting in, and Indy is, but now Indy, even there, the top-notch teams that we kind of talked about, Tennessee, how they survived losing Henry, Kansas City, because they're just Kansas City, New England under Belichick, and even the Bills, who've been up and down. Those are kind of the teams we were talking about. It's been a lot more up and down there, but they're all likely to get in the playoffs if they haven't clinched already. So I'm not completely sure. But the thing you and I haven't talked about, we've talked about how we feel about it as fans. We haven't talked about what's really going on with the players' health and safety, which is supposed to be a big deal.
And yet, by the same token, you have issues out there where you have, you just mentioned Wentz with vaccination. You had Aaron Rodgers and the hullabaloo about that earlier in the year. So in this case, how much wiggle room do you give the players on this on personal choice? Or if is it one of those things where some companies, come down and it's like you have to show proof of 100% vaccination and 100% proof of the booster if you've had it or scheduled to get it done in order to be involved in this project? Does the NFL have to come down with that, or do they allow universal choice and just make the best of it? By using universal choice right now, you get a product like you had last night on Monday Night Football, national stage, and you got a kid that frankly was well out of his element. His second career pass was a pick six. And yeah.
You got a kid who was well out of his element in a game that mattered on both for so many teams, including not just the two teams that were playing. And now we're talking about a Dolphin team that has done something no other team has ever done: 7 losses and 7 wins. And, and we're not even talking about them. Like, remember, you and I talked on NFL Insiders. This was the game to watch to see what Tua is. Tua had a nice game, but it was not the story. He had a nice game. This guy's leading the NFL completion percentage at 70%. It's not the story of the game because COVID is. So I don't disagree with you. They are risking their product. As a fan, they haven't hurt their product enough yet for me. Now, let's look at the reality of it. I'm an Eagles fan, so my team has been helped, right? So there's no anger there for me. I'm like, okay.
COVID hurt one of your leagues in Philly, and actually one of your teams in Philly, and actually helped another one. So
right. Well, I'm not worried about the Sixers yet because the season just started 3 days ago, according to me, and they're in a playoff spot. But yes, what I think will be interesting is, and it's a subject you and I have broached a few times, but now we're really going to, it's going to be a subject that's going to be making headlines in another week or two all over the place, is if we're Major League Baseball, are we, and we have the CBA coming up, are we going to put that into the CBA? And what are we going to do if, let's say we decide yes, and we're going to fight for that yes because we want our product to be as good as possible? Are we going to call fully vaccinated 1 round of shots? Are we going to say a booster? Or are we going to say it so if the CDC or the WHO says you need a second booster or you should have annual boosters, that's going to be maintained? And let's not forget, I don't want to equate this to the flu, but we do let people get the flu and go out and play and brag about it. Michael Jordan. So, it's like, should we also be starting to do this for other diseases that are contagious and could affect the whole team? And what do we want? So there's a lot of conversation that can be had and can go further one way or the other. And again, it's a lot of personal choice versus business choice. You get all of that plus, hey, this is my product I'm protecting. It could go in some ways that some people are going to be bothered by. Will be bothered by. I think it was Smoltzy, but I'm not positive, who said to his wife a little bit before they actually started testing for steroids, if I ever get killed by a ball coming back at me, sue the MLB for not steroid testing. It might have been somebody else. It was definitely a pitcher said something like that. And we also know that when they instituted testing to see if they should test, players who were clean came forward, or at least claimed to be clean, and came forward and said, I'm not getting tested because I want it to be a failed test because I want testing to be in place. So we know there's like that side, there's groups, we know we got Cole Beasley's and Aaron Rodgers, and we know we got other guys who are like, dude, you should be getting your booster. It should be mandatory. We got both sides, just like we have in the world. We have it on the fields too, and it's in the unions.
But the problem with baseball, since you mentioned that, is that the baseball, the players' union is, by my count, the strongest union of any of the sports in the U.S. They have really, in a lot of ways, more power than any of the other ones do. So in order to come out with some kind of an agreement on this and say, okay, we're limiting personal choice, the players are going to bark back at something like that and be like, it should be left up to us. It's our call. And again, you're watering down and possibly damaging the product when you have a COVID variant that spreads, like you said, like a flu. So what does that do right now, especially with how far apart these two are, when it comes to baseball? Is that another hurdle that's going to have to be overcome in order to have, basically a season start at some point? Is that something else that's going to be on the table? Can they come up with another answer to that? And how much does that argument damage the reputation of an already suffering league right now?
That's a great question, because you are right. As far as most people are concerned, the player union in baseball has won every CBA till the last one. Like, that's kind of like, oh, they won, except for the last one. And now they're back out for blood. Not only are they the strongest union, they are the most contentious union. So you got that could be a problem that they're going to have to face up and deal with. And again, we don't know what's happening in that player union. There could be some guys going, "Hey, let's get that vaccine."
And that's that. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I just think in general, though, you're right. It's another lever that's going to be put into these negotiations without knowing who wants what. That's going to make that longer. Basketball has, if Omicron flattens and doesn't dip, basketball and hockey might have to go back to their what they did during during that small wave. Because if you look at it now, that was a small wave. They might have to go and do their little islands again, which is fine. I think it was good for basketball. Like, they kept the sport alive, and they know how to get there quicker. Like, they can institute it and get moving to it. Baseball, I think, has interesting situation because they can negotiate it into this collective bargaining agreement. Football, like you said, is the one that's most at risk. They could end up flubbing the Super Bowl. Like, they could literally have a Super Bowl that starts off at the beginning of the week talking about a rematch of the last year, or here's Aaron Rodgers' chance to get his second versus Mahomes' chance to really make they have these great storylines that go poof. And then I'm watching two quarterbacks I don't know, and a running back aside, So the NFL has the most to lose. They should be talking to those teams right now, saying, if you make the Super Bowl, like, they should be getting those hotels in lockdown now, getting those facilities in lockdown now, and just be like, which is how we're going to do the Super Bowl. Super Bowl, you're going to be sequestered. That's not the quarantine. It's going to be a quarantine Super Bowl.
Sequester works.
Yeah. Like that. If I'm the NFL, that's what I'm working on. I don't care what happens. What a playoff game goes sideways. One team is playing Ian Brook and the other team is playing whomever. Well, the team still got into the playoffs, so they deserve. That's fine. But that Super Bowl, you want to quarantine from the day after you win. Quarantine, have set up for those who have COVID where they're going to go, because with the protocols, those tests will fly. I mean, most guys who, if you don't get it, if you get in there and you test the day you arrive, you test the next day, and you test the third day. If you haven't caught it in that time, and everyone who does is taken out, with Omicron, if you don't interact with anyone, those guys who got it early should be clear. And those guys who didn't have it will stay clear, and you should be able to play a Super Bowl with a full squad. Fingers crossed, though. It's up to the NFL to decide whether that's what they want to do or not, though.
And in this case, unlike what happened with Washington and the Eagles, you can't move that game back. There's so many moving parts with it, so much bigger. Obviously, even the halftime show alone, plus basically, the advertising dollars, the international stage of it, it's not that easy to move a game like that, and probably they couldn't. So, if you have to basically say, Aaron Rodgers does come down with it, everybody comes down with it, and they have to sign, a quarterback like Bortles, and he's suddenly starting a Super Bowl here, it's a great story for him, but it's bad, like I said, for the product of the league to not have, your biggest stars on display, on a stage that's probably going to be, I don't know what, 200 countries at least,
So I got one COVID parallel and one non-COVID parallel. So as you mentioned, the union got killed by COVID, but it was a playoff game. So you accepted it, and then New York got there and they got the win. I don't think anyone said, their win was tarnished because they played a COVID team.
You didn't hear the fans that day.
Yeah, the local fans are one thing, but I don't think the general MLS fans are talking about that. Meanwhile, in F1, there were some bad calls all the way along the season, but the last disputed call in the last lap of the race, still 2.5 weeks out, it is marring the sport. They're trying to get people excited for next season, and it's still marring the sport. So back to my point is like, don't let this, and your point, don't let the Super Bowl go wonky. Get those players quarantined. Let the playoffs will be what the playoffs will be, but don't let that Super Bowl go wonky. You just can't.
Fair enough. So, okay, cool. So right now we're about 25 minutes in at this point. Thank you for the insight. I appreciate that. As always, you can find the Sports Den on SSW Sports Den on Twitter and also on Facebook and Instagram at Spanglish World Sports Den. I am, of course, Scott Churchson, rocking out my Eagle Fang Karate shirt for Cobra Kai Season 4, paling by absolute unbridled comparison to Mr. Obi Spencer, who is rocking out the tuxedo, the bow tie, the hat, and the whole 9 yards on that. And you know what? Bow ties are cool. Got to throw that line in there too. And you know what? You're pulling off a very good Renaissance kind of look there.
I do what I can, 1950s or 60s or 20s or whatever it is. It's I'm all for it.
You need like a cane and a monocle.
And of course,
Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Nice. So we just need to get the cane going. Possibly. Do you have a pocket square there? Can you get a little pocket square?
What's funny is my mother gave me 2 pocket squares for Christmas, saying I'm the only person she knows who could wear a pocket square. So I do have them, but I don't know how to fold them yet.
Okay. Well, you do have the sort of regal thing going on there with that whole, that whole look there.
Well, maybe I'll get an ascot.
Oh, yes, I get an ascot there, yes. Yeah, bully. But anyway, we just went off a weird track on that, rocking. But like I said, right now it's 4:27, so we're about halfway through the show at this point. I did want to talk a little bit, in this case, about the NFL. We got the 2 weeks remaining, COVID notwithstanding. We've already, I think, beaten the dead horse with that. But looking at what's happening on the horizon, word has come down that Garoppolo is going to miss probably next game because of an injury. I think it was an ACL or MCL to the thumb. And this team right now, obviously, that gives an advantage to your Eagles, who had a decent second half, I guess we'll call it, on Sunday. They were tied against the Giants 3-3. But if you had to pick right now, as you're looking at the NFL standings, one team to be like, I didn't see them getting into the playoffs this year. Do you have one? And I'll give you, you show me yours, I'll show you mine.
I did not see the Eagles making it. I will say that the Eagles are the big surprise to me. Look, at one point we were talking about every team in the NFC West making it. Like, it was that lopsided in the beginning, and then the Seahawks Wilson got hurt, and they just fell apart from there. So the 49ers are not a surprise at all. And if you look at some of Garoppolo's numbers, I think he's number 2 in completion percentage, and number 1 in yards per pass, some stuff like that. Garoppolo's having a very nice season. And the running game is, of course, masterful because that's what Shanahan's doing. So not them. I would go with the Eagles in the NFC. But then again, who else was going to be the last team? Minnesota? The Seahawks, obviously, early. So I'm not sure who they're. In the AFC, I think obviously the big surprise, and to me, and there were definitely people who were not as surprised as I am, was New England. I think them coming in almost for a moment there, having a chance at winning the division. Not big chance now, but still have a good chance at making the playoffs. They're a big surprise, and not surprised they made the playoffs, but Cincinnati winning the division going away right now is kind of a surprise. But yeah.
That's where basically, like, Cincinnati was going to be my absolute one for the AFC. This is a team that has not had a winning season since 2015. Prior to that, they did have a decent run there with Dalton. But, in this case, you're seeing a team that right now is in first place. Part of it has to do with the pretty much heavy drop-off that the Ravens have had. Lamar Jackson is still questionable. So we don't know what to expect there. But a queer little quirk, the team that I'm going to go with on this one that surprises me a little bit, I have to go with the Rams. I know that basically they've had success, the last few seasons. They know they won the Super Bowl, but when you have a new quarterback and you had that kind of a quirk trade that happened between them and Detroit, I wasn't sure what to expect with that team. And I wasn't sure if it was going to be a team that was going to struggle a little bit. And you see what's happening with them as they're on the rise up. You're seeing what's happening right now with the Cardinals on the fall down, which almost I have to wonder if maybe it's a blessing in disguise for that team because of their record on the road all year. But the Rams surprised me a little bit with the fact that they're in first place. I didn't see that one coming. I personally would have figured second place, maybe even third place with Stafford at quarterback. But to their credit, they are really starting to take a chokehold on the NFC West and taking control of their own destiny and where they're going to land. I am not really surprised too much by what I'm seeing out of Green Bay. I'm not seeing too much of a surprise what I'm seeing out of the Tampa Bay Bucks. I am a little surprised, though, I got to say, with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's probably my other pick there for the NFC. This is a team that's missed the playoffs last 3 seasons. This is a team that has struggled and had a quarterback coming back from a season-ending injury last year and a lot of question marks about what Dak was going to bring to the table. That team right now has a shot of going probably even as high as 2 in the NFC right now. They have not been to an NFC championship since 1996. So is this the year that it happens? I'm going to go on a limb and say yes. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl, but I do see them as a team that will at least break the streak and get to the NFC championship. Again, we mentioned it earlier, COVID, who knows what kind of a monkey wrench that will throw into every aspect of it. It might not affect everything. It might affect both teams. It might affect only one team. You don't know with something like this. And that is a surprising X factor that could make literally any team a successful team that week. And with the Cowboys right now, I like what that team is bringing to the table. I know it doesn't help you much for week 18 if they are trying to go for, if they have already pretty much locked themselves in to a spot, maybe not. But this team, like I said, could go as high as 2 with everything that's going on right now with the Bucs and the chaos that's happening there. They had a good win against the Panthers. I think you said it on NFL Insiders. They use that game Tom Brady used that game to figure out how he wants to basically manage that offense. And obviously they managed it well, racking up 32 points. But with Godwin being out, Fournette being iffy, Evans being iffy, and even to a degree, Gronk being iffy. He did miss a few weeks. He is injury prone. If he gets injured at the wrong time, that could also spell doom for that team. So it might end up being something where Tom Brady has to play a lot of his playoff games on the road if more injuries happen or they can't adapt. They have the Jets, I believe, this week, so it's not going to be that much of a challenge there. But again, it's still an adjustment period that's going to remain to be seen what's going to end up happening. For me personally, I would not surprise me if the Bucs could theoretically fall as low as 4th.
So the Bucs are in a strange situation. That whole thing is weird because if the Rams lose, the Bucs go from 4 to 2. Mm-hmm. If the Cowboys win out, the Bucs win out, and the Rams lose one game, they go from 4 to 2. But if all 3 are in there, then it goes to the second tiebreaker in the game that the Bucs beat the Cowboys in game 1 of the season doesn't matter. So there you go. But that I'd like to commend you for admitting your surprise about the Rams because they were the sexy pick at the beginning of the season. But for you to say, not only weren't they not only didn't I pick them, I'm actually surprised that the people who went with the sexy pick were right. Kudos to you for fessing up to that, as opposed to be like, that was my bandwagon all along. But I'm very curious, by the way, if they're healthy, if Cowboys play Tampa Bay again. Now, granted, the last couple of games I've seen the Cowboys play, they played against some really bad NFC East teams, which to me, like I said early in the season, they're the team I most expect to make the playoffs because the rest of that division went. I'm going to need to I really do need to get a soundboard. But
also in the film set we have one. So.
Yeah. I mean, but back to the story here. But watching them the last few games with Lawrence, Gregory, and Mika LT Parsons healthy, they're getting pressure with 4 up the middle. And, I've said it 1,000 times. it's easy to beat Tom Brady. You just get pressure with 4 up the middle. That's the strategy. I can draw it up. It doesn't take a genius to do it. But find me 4 guys who can get pressure up the middle against that Bucs offensive line, and we've only found one team, that's Tampa Bay. So, but maybe this Cowboy team has now figured it out because, Micah Parsons may be only the second guy ever to win Defensive Player of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, it's pretty hard. Unless you want to give it to Watt, who's on that team that I guess he's the only bright spot, but still, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that matchup again. That's a game I want to see again, to be honest. Healthy, those 2 teams. Something else to keep in mind about these early seedings is don't forget the seedings re-go. So if any team has an upset, the number 1 seed gets to play the wild card team. So it doesn't. If the number 2 team loses to, if it's Cowboys at 2 and the Eagles at 7, and the Eagles get the underdog, get the big win, Green Bay is looking at the Eagles, or Green Bay is looking at San Francisco. I think that really is, and I know you like to say it's going through Green Bay, which it is. But if Green Bay's first game is against the Eagles or San Francisco, as opposed to the Bucs, one of the other big 5, wow, that's really going to help them out a lot. So I really like I really like the winner of whoever gets the number 1 seed in the NFC to really have a nice cushion, because I think there's going to be an upset in the first round. There always is. I don't know who it's going to be, but yeah, it's going to be there available.
I look at it also from the standpoint that, Aaron Rodgers' win percentage for his career is a whopping like 86, 87%. And a lot of that I think has to do with the fact that come January, it's Green Bay. Let's just call it what it is. Green Bay, the weather being what it is. So if you mentioned the Cowboys, you mentioned the Bucs in this case, these are 2 teams, Tom Brady and Gronk notwithstanding, these are 2 teams that are predominantly used to playing somewhat warmer environments. The Cowboys, granted, they do play against Philadelphia once a year. They play against the Giants and Washington once a year, but it is not Green Bay, and it's not regularly. They play in Dallas. The Bucs, they play the NFC South, warmer environment. They don't play typically a lot of games in colder weather environments, which is why I think Aaron Rodgers also has success, because him and the Packers have adapted to it. You take a warmer team. You mentioned San Francisco. You take that team, you put it in a colder environment. If you have a Green Bay game where it's 3 degrees out, snowy, windy, and just crap across the board, you have to go advantage the Packers on that, just because of the fact that they are so used to dealing with it and their opponents aren't. That could play a big factor here as well.
So I was, one of the many articles I was reading, let me see if I can find it, was talking about Rodgers' possible impact on the Rodgers effect. Oh, here it is. Yes. So there's a expected record you have based on how many points you score versus how many points you give up. And right now the Packers their expected record is 9-6. But this is historically something that we have seen under Aaron Rodgers, where the Packers have 2 or 3 more wins than this Pythagorean theorem, as they call it in sports, predicts. And as I think I said on NFL Insiders and here before, that's because, giving the ball back to Aaron Rodgers with 30 seconds left and up by 2, you've lost the game. More than with all due respect to any other quarterback I've ever seen play, except for maybe Elway. He is the guy who's going to do that. So you're only going to win by 1 point. It's going to affect your Pythagorean theorem, and then you're going to go on. So in this article I was reading, they were calling it the Rodgers effect. And so you take that, you combine it with the cold weather, and all of a sudden, a good Bucs team with a good defense and Tom Brady gets that last score, but still leaves 20 seconds on the clock. And they're still like, okay, now we got to watch this guy do what this guy does. And it's pretty impressive what he does. So that's still out there. That's why if they have home field, it's going to be my 40 cents will be on the Green Bay Packers to make it to the Super Bowl in the NFC, COVID notwithstanding.
Yeah, and of course, again, in this case, COVID notwithstanding, it's going to be the catchphrase probably till the end of the season, and then who knows, possibly beyond that. So it's a messy situation. Let's, like I said, hope for the best in this case. See what ends up happening, and knock on wood, it doesn't affect the playoffs, and like I said, especially the Super Bowl. Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left at this point. By the way, that was 3 5s I just did right there. As always, three area, three, 1, 2, 3. As always, you can find us on Spanglish World Sports Den on Facebook and Instagram, and also on Twitter at SSW Sports Den. With the remaining 15 minutes, because of the fact that you did say that the NBA season has officially started, it's Christmas, start of the NBA season, more or less, officially in your mind. I want to talk to you a little bit about right now what's happening in this general area, the Nets, the Knicks, the 76ers. You want to talk about that too. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening over with LA too, and the Lakers, what's going on there, and generally also your thought about the play-in tournament, how that whole thing goes down. What's your opinion there, expanding the playoffs kind of in a way? But you know what? Let's start there first. The playoff format. Thoughts, likes, dislikes?
Kind of liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it last year. I liked it last year because it gave us that opportunity to see Steph versus LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's why I liked it. You know what I mean? Like, is it always going to be a year where we're going to have two of the greatest players in the game sitting at the bottom, and you're like, if one of these teams making the playoffs, they're going to, they stand a chance? Or is it going to usually be some crappy teams that we don't care about? That it's not going to matter. And we're just going to, deal with that. Oh, these guys aren't that good. And let's get these one games over with. So, time will tell. Last year, I think, certainly helped with the oddity of getting, seeing Steph and LeBron back there.
And the oddity, obviously, of COVID being the way it is. I give the NBA credit for how they were able to make a lot of that happen. So, in your case right now, looking over the standings real quick, your 76ers are not doing badly. I know habitually you talk about the fact that the team's kind of crap, but you know what? This is also the East. The East, typically, you can have a team with a losing record still make the playoffs. It doesn't really happen in the West, but it happens in the East. Your team is currently sitting at 6th right now. It's had some challenges with some of the players, some, shall we say, off the field, some challenges, or off the court issues there too. But give me a couple of thoughts as what you think is going to happen with the 76ers right now. Can they still make the playoffs? Can they make it in the top 6, we'll say, in that case? Or do you think they drop down below and fall into the play-in?
This is a team I think is a trade away from getting into that solid 3rd or 4th place. If it's the right trade, they're competing with Milwaukee and the Nets. And look, Chicago's still doing well, so maybe I should say Chicago as well. I don't know that the trade's out there. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's any appetite for Simmons. I think this is a guy who thought he was more attractive than he was, if you will. And he's not James Harden. He's not a scorer. He's a very look. Until that last game that he played, I was on Simmons' side of the argument. I'm like, the man can play defense. The man can move the ball around, and he can score inside. And then he didn't score inside. And he did not score inside because the shot wasn't there or he didn't. And I think if I can see it, and if everyone in Philadelphia can see it, and if the announcers watching the game can see it, all of the GMs can see it, that he has a limited potential because he won't put in the work. Because it's odd to me, but there is a litany of great NBA players who couldn't shoot when they came in the game, including Chris Paul and Jason Kidd and Rajon Rondo at that position, at the point guard position, guys who could see the court, pass the ball, move with speed, but couldn't shoot and learn to shoot. LeBron James used to be a liability at the line. All right. So it's not learn to shoot, but he refused to do it or couldn't do it or whatever. And he's not lived up. And at this point, nobody wants to pay him max money except for the Sixers, and they don't want to either. That's the bad news. The good news for the Sixers is Maxi's good.
Mhm.
He is good. They have a point guard. They have a point guard they can win with if they can find another exciting, dynamic piece. So it doesn't have to be someone who's supposed to be an all-star like Simmons was, which is what they were holding out for the beginning of the deal. If they can find another guy who they can start, which is a big, you got Embiid, you got Maxi, so I guess it's going to be a small forward position. If you got little brother, that's my nickname for I can't even name, Steph and his little Seth. It's all due respect, Seth Curry. I apologize. I know you have a better 3-point shooting percentage than your big brother. I should give you more respect. Apologies, but so can they get a guy, essentially who's better than Tobias Harris, even if in there to go along with everybody for Simmons and maybe Thibault, or it's possible that they can go ahead and make that move. And the NBA is open to that. Now, there's a ridiculous trade floating around right now. I don't want to say ridiculous. High-profile trade where they send over Simmons, and I even think it's Maxi, for AD to the Lakers. Give the Lakers a couple of playmakers to spread the ball around, and then you get Twin Towers and Davis and Embiid in try to stop us. We're just too darn big sort of situation. We'll see if that happens. I doubt it.
Fair. One last thing. Basically, we got about 9 minutes left, so I want to get your opinion on something right now. LeBron right now is about 3,000 points shy of the all-time record for NBA for points in the NBA. You're presuming that's going to take another season and a half, 2 seasons. In 2 seasons plus, he probably can be the first player in NBA history to have 40,000 points in his career. I know we've talked about this in the past, but where does he place versus the rest of the NBA, Michael Jordan, and is he the true GOAT, especially if he breaks 40,000 career points?
So, you're putting me on the spot because I don't like GOATs in team sports. LeBron gets knackered a little bit. LeBron gets taken down some notches in some people's minds because he had to build his super team as opposed to his GM building his super team. But come on, look at those teams that Jordan played with: Pippen and Cartwright, and of course the Worm and Kerr. The guys on those teams are all great. So just because a GM built it versus a player, I don't think you got to knock LeBron for that. Has he won all of his finals? No. Did he lose a first-round playoff game around until very recently? No. He didn't have those struggles in the beginning of his career. He got worse teams to the finals than Jordan. And when we start talking about rings, then don't we just have to say it's Russell and just leave both these guys on the bench 6 ain't nothing? As a guy of my age, I'm supposed to say Jordan. That's the other thing. But Jordan didn't capture me and bring me into the NBA like LeBron did. LeBron is the guy who really brought me into the NBA. That's not exactly true. I was in the NBA before LeBron came, but post Jordan, it was really that Spurs team that really brought me in. Pop's great Spurs team. Somehow they caught my attention and really got me. Oh, you got to watch all the playoffs. But then it was LeBron who was the next big superstar. So I kind of go with LeBron. But I'm not going to die on that hill. And if anyone wants to die on that hill for whatever side they're on, you're making a mistake. It's too complicated of a sport and too changing of a sport still to do it.
The thing about LeBron, though, is if you remember, you go back, in this case, God help me for saying this, 20 years now, his high school games were being broadcast on ESPN. So even before he entered the NBA, he was already a massive, massive influence, while still in high school as a teenager. His contract was a rookie contract with the Cavs, but I think he signed like $120 million deal with Nike. It was like he got like 3 or 4, rookie contract was $4 million a year with the Cavs. And like 120 million right off the bat as an 18-year-old, just to have basically to wear Nikes instead of Adidas or anything else there. So, you talk about that kind of influence. To me personally, I think LeBron is the better player, but Jordan is the more impactful one, if that makes sense, just based on the difference between, what they brought to the table, the influence that they had. Again, that is a generational thing. You and I were old farts. So, we stick to basically our 90s and 2000s. That's going to open up a super important question I'm going to have in a second. But you look at it from a generational standpoint. LeBron is the better player, but to me, Michael Jordan is, like I said, the more well-known athlete of the two and the more influential one. Now, my opinion.
Can I interrupt you there for a second?
Please, please, please.
I just want to go. Yes, I think that is a great take on your part, and that his influence affects people's perception of his greatness.
Mm-hmm. Now, big question here: Space Jam or Space Jam 2?
I ain't seen either of them. No, I saw Space Jam, I think, when I was a kid. It never excited me. And I did not go see. I read the reviews. It's like, this is a WB commercial with LeBron in it. I'm like, okay, I'll pass.
But see, that's kind of indicative. I watched, who was Nostalgia Critic, had a breakdown on Space Jam 2. And the way he explained it was actually made a lot of sense. For me personally, Space Jam 1 is the better of the two films. Again, generational thing. But both films are a product of their time. So in this case, the original one had a lot of 90s tropes in it, a lot of that, basically a lot of what was popular then. Now, at this point in this fast-paced 2021 world, it is so much about pop culture references, dropping things in, and hey, look at that kind of a thing, because that's the way comedy kind of works right now. So, the easiest way, I think, to be able to figure out with anybody how old they are is to ask which Space Jam movie they prefer. Because the line is pretty much drawn right in the sand. If you're our age, it's Space Jam 1. If you're basically a kid or something like that, or, basically millennial, it's Space Jam 2 and LeBron. Because it's a product of its time and the comedy that works in its era.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Trainwreck as the better of the two movies and leave it at that.
Okay.
LeBron did a fine job in Trainwreck. I mean, he played himself, but did a fine job.
He did.
No Peyton Manning, but he did a fine job.
He did a better job, I think, in Trainwreck than he did in Space Jam 2. But yeah, that's just my take there. By the way, my name is Scott Churchson. Basically, you can always find me, at Scott Churchson if you want to basically troll me and send me hate messages about the fact that I preferred Space Jam 1 over 2. I can take it. So we're getting the note, by the way, that the countdown is happening 3 minutes and now 2 minutes. So as I wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm Obi Spencer. You can find me here on Zingo TV on the Spanish Network. I also have a podcast, Drinking from the Garden Hose, with my buddy Ed. It's not that big of a deal. You find that on Fridays, on every other Friday.
It's a big deal, dude. Be proud.
And yeah, if you have anything nice to say about me, especially how wonderfully dapper I'm dressed, I love to hear compliments. Please don't send me bad things at Obi Spencer on Twitter.
Yeah. Be nicer to Obi than you would be on Reddit. We'll put it that way. But yeah, as for me, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, we have Tales from the Film Set. Me, Ryan, JT, and Rob Leckington will be breaking down Matrix Resurrection, or as we're calling it now, Matrix Indigestion, although I did like the movie. We will also be previewing and predicting what was going to happen with Cobra Kai Season 4, and that's why I've got the Eagle Fang t-shirt on from Season 3. So basically, definitely tune that in there. Tomorrow night on the Tales from the Film Set Twitch page, we will be doing a watch party for Boba Fett Episode 1. So first time we're watching it, that'll be 8 p.m. Eastern. But for now, my name is Scott Churchson. That dapper-looking individual is Mr. Obi Spencer. Thank you to both Eduardo and Rebecca over there for handling everything with producing it today. Thanks to the good folks at Spanglish Sports World, Spanglish World Network, and of course, Zingo TV. I'm Scott. That's Obi. Have a great night and be awesome. So.